Welcome to Engaging and Empowering School Libraries podcast. This podcast is dedicated to raising the profile of school libraries by exploring topics that are shaping education and teaching today. Whether it's innovative learning strategies, the role of technology, or collaboration between teachers and librarians, we're here to spark conversations and share ideas that make a difference. I'd like to start by introducing Learnix, our new podcast sponsors. If you are a school librarian teaching credible sources, outlining and research skills, Learnix is here to help. Learnix simplifies the research process by tracking students' searches, website visits, and notes, and then organizes everything into an easy-to-navigate format. The platform also creates perfectly formatted bibliographies and generates a snapshot report that provides valuable insights into each student's research habits. Visit learnix.com to learn more and to schedule a demo. Mention that you heard about Learnix from Engaging and Empowering School Libraries podcast to receive 20% off your subscription. At the heart of Engaging and Empowering School Libraries is my training membership. It's designed to inspire and motivate school librarians to be 10% braver in their roles, providing a supportive community where you can grow your confidence, share experiences, and develop new skills. If you're looking to connect with like-minded professionals and take your school library to the next level, then visit elizabethahutchinson.com to find out more. Now, let's dive into today's episode. I'm delighted today to be joined by school librarians Jenny Toerien, Matthew Rose, and my usual co-host, Ruth Maloney. Welcome, everyone. We're heading back into the discussion around AI and skills, a hot topic which we hope we will widen our understanding and share our experiences and get you maybe to think about other things. So can we start with brief introductions? So Jenny, can I bring you in first? Can you just give me a brief introduction?
Certainly. I'm part of the library team at Blanchland College, so I'm the senior librarian, the librarian for the senior school under my husband Daryl, who's in charge of inquiry learning. We've been there for about 4 years. Prior to that, we were at Oakham School, and between us, Daryl founded and runs the Fossil Group website, and I support him in that.
Fantastic, thank you. And Matthew, can you give me a brief introduction?
Sure. My name is Matthew Rose, and I'm a middle school and high school librarian and our library coordinator at the International School of Stuttgart in Stuttgart, Germany.
Thank you. So we're going to dive straight in to this conversation. And what I love about these podcasts is the fact that they can turn into something that I wasn't expecting. So when Jenny and Matthew agreed to do this podcast with me, we had this idea that we were going to talk about Notebook LM, and that somehow evolved into something very different, in my opinion. So I'm really excited to dive into some of these more in-depth conversations about how we are teaching skills and working with students when we have AI on the radar. So can I start with Matthew? Do you believe we can effectively teach students the skills they need to navigate AI, like critical thinking or ethical awareness, without using AI tools ourselves?
I don't think that we can. I think that if we're going to be credible in our instruction, what we teach, we have to have tried out different things, which, like in my context, it means listening to what my students talk about and talking to my CAS students and then trying things out. I think that's how ultimately I'm going to make the decision whether to include an AI tool in my instruction or not. So yeah, I think that I think we have to.
We have to, yeah. I think an understanding of what it is and how it works is definitely the way that I feel that things are moving forward. What about Ruth? Can I bring you in? What do you think, Ruth?
That's interesting. I'm not sure that's how I read the question.
Go on then.
I thought that you were suggesting that we would use the tools to teach the skills.
Okay.
The question was about what are those skills, and do we need the AI to help us teach those skills? To which my answer is absolutely not. I think we've said before, Elizabeth, that this is nothing new. This is just library, what would have been library skills, or parts of research, or whatever it is, parts of inquiry. It's all the same skills, we're just applying them to a different tool. And I would certainly agree with Matthew that I can't talk about AI from a position where I feel comfortable and confident unless I have tried it out. But I'm always very aware that my trying it out is artificial. And that, for me, is a slight barrier because I'm not carrying out my own research. The sorts of things I use AI for, I spent most of yesterday afternoon trying to make it give me the correct formula for an Excel spreadsheet that I was building, which it did very, very well once I'd cogitated myself. But those aren't the sorts of things that are really pushing where I'm thinking of my teaching with AI going. But yes, I certainly agree that we have to be using it, but not to support us in teaching the skills, just so that we are speaking from a point of knowledge.
Yeah. Jenny, do you want to come in?
Definitely. I think I have a slightly different slant again, in the sense that I think there's a difference between keeping up to date with what's out there and having a go and a play with some different tools and using them yourself in your everyday work. And I think we do need to keep update. We need to know what's going on. We need to have a bit of a go with things. But I absolutely don't think that they need to be a part of what we are doing in our everyday work, partly because that's actually not what I'm teaching the kids. I will teach them how the tools might impact them. But as things stand, I'm not convinced there are any AI tools that are of great benefit to my students as things that they should be using day in, day out as part of their work. And I think it would be hypocritical of me if I were using them day in, day out, because I just don't think that's where the tools are yet. And I don't think it's good for their education or their thinking process to be relying heavily on AI. And there is a fair amount of research that suggests that heavy AI use damages critical thinking skills.
Yeah, I would say it's really interesting, isn't it? Because the use just on my level, so I don't teach students, I teach school librarians, and just the planning of a training session, for example, it's so easy to give it a brief description of what it is I want, and then it will do it for me. And I can already feel that loss of having to think deeply about what it is that I want to do. It doesn't detract from the actual session itself currently because I have enough knowledge and background. But I can see if it's doing that for me, then maybe it is especially if we've got developing students, then it's potential to take away rather than enhance, could be something to keep an eye on. So when we talk about the fact that AI is just another tool, um, and I think we have to talk about it and you might disagree, Jenny, but I feel that we have to talk about it in the sense that it's it's what everybody's talking about. It's here, so it feels a bit like a hook to, we need to make them understand that even though AI is there, there are some core skills that they will need. Um, do you think librarians are already equipped to teach in the AI world, whatever that means? Can I bring Matthew into that one, please?
Sure. Yeah, I think so. I think that when I think about how a student would use AI for, say, research, they would begin by formulating a question. And that's what we all are trained to do. they're going to get some results, and then they have to evaluate the sources that are based on those results. That's what we are trained to do and what we teach. They're going to need to fact check the information in the results to see that it's it's accurate. And if they use it in any of their work, they're going to need to cite it. And so academic integrity. So I do believe that all of those things are things that we teach and that we're very well placed to be involved with. I'm confident about that.
Absolutely. Jenny, come on in.
I think just coming on that citing issue, one of my jobs is I'm the higher and the extended project qualification coordinator. So I have quite a focus on what the exam boards are allowing us to do. And citing is a big issue. So the guidance from JCQ, the group in charge of all the exam boards, is that if you use an AI tool for anything, then you need to provide screenshots of your entire conversation in with your coursework. Having done that, so that deals with the academic integrity issue, but having done that, their guidance goes on, they've got quite a bit of guidance to say that if the skill that you are supposed to be demonstrating, so say, for example, you're supposed to be demonstrating your ability to synthesize sources, or you're supposed to be demonstrating your ability to analyze a source and work out what it says. If it's clear that that skill has actually been done by the AI and not by the student, you won't get any marks for that. So for me, when you get to exam level, it's really, so they can use it and they can cite it, but it's really, really dangerous, and it's much more likely to lose them marks than gain them marks. And that then becomes a problem teaching to use AI tools further down, because it's like calculators in primary schools. Calculators are really useful in maths in secondary school, but if we give them to reception students and we let students all the way up primary school have calculators, and then suddenly at GCSE we take them away, they've got no number sense. They can't do their times tables. They don't understand whether an answer is right or wrong. They don't know how to do multiplication, long multiplication, things like that. And there's a danger, and I think AI is a new shiny thing, and I've seen a lot of heads in newspapers saying how we're going to introduce this all the way up the school because it's really important that our kids are future ready. But if you introduce it too early, you don't teach those critical thinking skills. You don't teach that analysis and evaluation. You don't teach all the skills that they will need when they are not actually allowed to rely on the AI. So your original question was about core skills. We need to teach all of the core skills that we're already teaching. Librarians are very equipped to teach that, but we need to be really careful how and when we introduce AI, because AI shortcuts those.
Do you think your knowledge itself on the exam board, do you think, are you in a position, Jenny, that you have to tell students the reasons for not using AI?
Yes.
Okay, so that in itself is another skill and load that you have to add to what you're already doing. That's fascinating. Matthew, can I bring you back in?
Yes, I was just curious, Ruth or Jenny, if you were aware if there's any similar publications on that from the IB, if it's the same with the IB. I'm just curious. I don't know.
Ruth, do you want to come in?
The IB have been a lot less prescriptive, I would say. They have welcomed they are, I would say, encouraging the use of AI and leaving it, as they often do, to the schools to make those decisions. So the conversation we're having in school at the moment is about what a sort of traffic lighting system for AI. Our feeling, I think, is that if the work is to be marked by anybody, you shouldn't be using AI. That isn't what the IB are saying. The IB are saying it's okay to use AI for your extended essay or your IAs. But I agree with Jenny, the danger of that is extremely difficult. And in fact, I have a problem with Grammarly and systems like that, because I think they have tipped from beyond spelling and basic grammar to a point at which you are not in control of it anymore. And that was one of the interesting things in training recently, was about a scale called MAILS, machine agency in learning scale, and it's looking at a sliding scale, or of how much agency the computing system has, and it can be anything from spell check right up to fully functioning, really complex AIs. And I think that's the conversation that we're having at school. It isn't really guided by the IB, because the IB have welcomed it and are accepting of what we're all saying, which is it's here. We can't, we shouldn't pretend it's not here. But I think there's a difference between pretending it's here and pretending it's not here and then welcoming it into everything the school does. I mean, we are about to have conversations with our incoming year 7s about why we're at school, why we set homework, what is the purpose of all of this stuff that we're doing, which is driven really by why not just go and ask AI? Because that's the kind of obvious counter argument is, well, and then there are more interesting conversations, I think, sorry, I've gone off, about the types of work you are setting and what can be done by AI. And if you're setting work that can be done by AI, what is it doing? What are the students gaining from that? Where are the skills? What are the skills that you are trying to teach? And how are they being taught? And if the student can replace that work with AI, there's a question, and then I think about what we're trying to achieve. Sorry, I'll stop rambling.
Yeah, it's fine. It's fine. Jenny, can I bring you back in?
So I think one really important thing that we've been talking with students about is things like writing essays, that the essay is a tool for thinking with, and it's not actually your product. The product is the learning. So AI can write essays for you. Not necessarily particularly well. I think a lot of things that it does in a sort of mediocre way. So if you're really poor at writing essays, it'll be better than you. But if you could be really good, it'll be worse than you. But Daryl had a lesson this last week actually with his year 9 classes, and he was talking to them because he was horrified when he sat down to write something in Word, and Copilot suddenly came up at the top with, give me the information that you're working from and tell me what kind of output you want, and I'll turn it into a business letter or whatever for you. You don't have to think about it, I'll just do it for you. And all 3 classes he spoke to were equally horrified. And this is year 9, who you'd think would go, whoa, yeah, they could do my work for me. But they said to him, but if we do that, we won't learn anything. And I think that's where the victory comes. It's those personal relationships with students where you are talking to them about their learning. And actually, if they've got that attitude to their learning, suddenly AI is less of a threat, because the uses that they might make of AI are much more likely to be the kind of helping you with your Excel spreadsheets type use, rather than the please do my homework for me type use. And I think it's those relationships and that understanding by the student of what school is for that's really important, rather than necessarily putting things in boxes and saying you can't do this and you can't do that, but you should do this. It's students taking ownership of what their learning is for.
I think it's really interesting, isn't it? I think what Ruth said about the Grammarly being available, and it almost creeps up on you. So yeah, at the beginning, it was correcting my bad spelling and give me a comma where I'd missed it, and now it can rewrite. Like, I'm on the free version, so it only does it once or twice, and then I have to do it myself. But it's so easy to fall into the trap that it's actually doing it better than my own sentence. And I think that's a real skill to understand that actually sometimes, like, you can use Grammarly. We're talking about Grammarly because that's what was brought up and what's in my head. But sometimes you can use it to look at and think to yourself, "Oh, yeah, I could have reworded that better." But then remember that I'm the human and actually, no, I liked it the way that it was. You know? Jenny, can I bring you back in?
It's just that phrase that you used, that the sense of it's better than my own sentence. I went to an author visit on Friday with Robin Stevens, who is absolutely brilliant. And one of the first things she was talking about was that it's very tempting to think, I don't have good enough ideas for a book. I'll just ask AI and get it to give me some ideas. And she said, actually, what makes your ideas for a novel unique and special and worth reading are the fact that they're built on the life that you've lived. And without that, everything coming out of the AI, in a sense, is kind of similar because it hasn't lived a life like you, and your stuff will be special because you've lived it. And actually having that coming from someone outside school to all of year 7 was really, really powerful. And we really enjoyed her talk for all sorts of reasons. But for me, that was my big takeaway from her talk.
Amazing. Ruth, can I bring you back in?
Yeah, I was just thinking about something that I don't think we have got our heads around. I was wondering whether either of you have, which is that insidious creep that Elizabeth was talking about. But I'm thinking at the top of Google, that slightly gives me the heebie-jeebies, because I find myself being drawn into, oh, well, right at the top of Google, it's given me the answer. And even and we're all well experienced. We all know that needs double checking. But quite often I just think, oh, yeah, I'm sure that's right. And off I go. And I'm very conscious that it's all very well talking about AI as if you have to go to it. And even Grammarly you have to go to. But it's, as you're saying, Jenny, from Daryl's experience, it's more and more and more. And I'm aware that I don't have a plan for that, really. I mean, I know there's not a different set of skills, but it is something that there is no conscious action to go and are the students able to recognize AI when they see it, I think, is my question.
Mm. Any responses to that one?
Yeah, happily. I think you're right. I think if you stopped them and asked them if that was AI, they'd take a second and go, oh yeah, actually it is. But I think it's very under the radar, and they don't necessarily immediately think it's the AI response. It's just kind of there. And that's something we'll need to teach. And I think you're right. It's not something that has been enough front and center of my teaching. And I think my first question with it would be, where has this information come from and how do we know it's accurate? And we do it in with the things like crap testing, because that's just impossible to crap test. Interestingly, there's been some research, again, fairly recently. Some of the AIs have started citing their sources, but the recent research said that's not actually always that accurate. So they are citing sources. Mostly they're real sources. Sometimes they're muddling up which source got which information from where. So you're needing to go and read the sources anyway. And if you've got to do that anyway, you might as well just start with real sources in the first place. And that's the conversation I'm trying to have with my students, that AI in that context, if you're actually being careful about it, isn't saving you time. It's actually costing you time. You'd be better off finding the sources and checking them yourself.
So that takes us on to another question, which is talking about and I think I know the answer before I even ask it. How might we use AI ourselves to enhance our ability to teach skills like evaluating information, understanding bias, or questioning sources? I think from what we're saying is that we're less inclined to teach with AI, but we definitely need to understand it more to be able to support. Matthew, have you got an answer to that question?
Well, no, I was playing around with Notebook LM thinking about that question. And, when I put two sources in and asked it a question, it created a nice 2-page, with 20 sources answer to that question, just whatever question I posed. And I started looking at, what they put together and, the citations and linking it to the text. And I thought, isn't this a great chance for me to practice checking citations for accuracy? And I was able to go and look at the original source material in a way that would be much harder, with someone's essay, just because it was all very easy to get to. So I think in terms of, for me personally, just practicing it was okay. But then I thought, okay, can I model this same activity with a group of students? And I thought, no, probably not. That's not going to be helpful to do with them. It's helpful for me to feel more comfortable with, with that, but that's not going to be something that I use to teach. And I think that's what I'm, kind of trying to say, is that, it's a chance to look at a way to teach and say, do I want to incorporate this into my instruction? Yes or no? And then I make a choice. So that's, yeah.
Yeah. So do you think we can, like, I have taught that we need to, if you're in the past, when I was teaching, understanding Google, that some of the stuff you would find would be biased based on the person writing it and whatever. With AI, the bias is built in. And that's a really difficult thing to unpack, isn't it? Because I think the more AI writes, the more it sounds real. It sounds realistic and difficult to highlight where the bias is, or why it would be biased. Is that a difficult one, Ruth? Come on in.
Yeah, I think there's another problem as well. I was having a conversation with my son, who was trying to get me to say, yes, that's okay. Of course, that use of AI is absolutely fine. And I wouldn't do that. And I was pushing and pushing and pushing. And the conversation he was having was, well, I just used it to help me find the sources. And then I went away. And of course, I looked at all the sources thoroughly and I evaluated them all thoroughly, Mum. But actually, I have a problem with that because why would you rely on somebody else to find your sources for you? Yeah, absolutely, it's a starting point, but if it's your finishing point, that's not enough. Just as with Wikipedia, I would say, yeah, off you go, start with Wikipedia, look at the references, go and find those references, see where they take you, work the whole thing through, fine. But I think the temptation is to think, well, AI has done this, here are all these great sources, I'll go and read them, but I don't need to look for anything else because AI has done this. And that is a problem from a research point of view, I think.
Yeah, Jenny, can I bring you in?
I think you're right. I think part of the problem as well is it's very easy to say, yeah, of course I'll go away and read them and check them, make sure they're all fine. You read a couple of them and they're fine, so they're probably all fine, so I won't bother with the rest. And children are children and we're all busy, so I'm not naive enough to believe that if my students generated something like that through AI, they would actually go and check all the sources. They don't even go and check all the sources when they're ones they found. So I'm not convinced they're doing that. And I think another issue is that the more they rely on AI to summarize and synthesize and those kind of things, so they're using something like Notebook LM, the more their skimming and scanning skills disappear. So talking to a friend who was saying, and she had a really good point, this is somebody who's using something completely different outside school, that an AI could summarize a really long document for her because it was a technical document. You needed to work out what it was about and whatever. But then what I'm teaching my students to do with academic sources is, which bits of this document do I actually need to read? Where should I start? Where should I finish? Which bits can I ignore? And as soon as you start relying on AI to do it for you, you completely lose all of those skills because you're not practicing them. and then you are dependent. And that's a really, really dangerous place to be, because I'm not overly trusting of the AI companies. Google search has got worse and worse in certain ways over the years, and there are indications that maybe that's because they're dominant, and in a sense it's almost a strategy. And if AI sucks us in enough that it becomes something that we and our children are using routinely to the extent that we forget the skills that we need to use without it, then we're at the mercy of the companies that made it, and that's a real problem.
So one of the things that I've just thought about is the fact that we can do this in school. We can explain to them, we can help, we can assist. We can't do that at home. And there isn't, is there something missing that needs to be taught in a way that if you are going to use it well? Is there an argument for that? So, you almost need to take that next step, don't you? That, we're advised that you don't, but if you do, how would you manage that one, Jenny?
I think what we're actually talking about is academic integrity, and that's something we picked up from the IB. It's something we talk about a lot. We're not an IB school, just to be clear. We talk about a lot at school, and it's about developing the character of your learners to be the kind of people. John Royce produced a beautiful article about this. It's called The Integrity of Integrity. To be the kind of people who do the right thing, whether anyone's looking or not. And doing the right thing is not necessarily not using AI. There may be occasions where, and I have a few. So, for example, one of my HPQ students is making a website. And the content of the website is the important bit of his HPQ. That's the bit he's essentially being judged on, not the images. But the site will need some images because websites without images look weird. So I've said to him, it's okay if you want. You've still got to cite it all and put it in your put the screenshots in. But it's okay for you to use AI generated images on that. And we've talked about why that's okay, but generating the text wouldn't be okay. And it's having these conversations in school so that you are shaping the character of your learners so that when they go home, they understand where the lines are and what the ethical choices are. And they want to be the kind of people who do the right thing, whether anyone's watching or not. And they're children, and they are busy, and they will butt up against deadlines, and they're not always going to get it right. But we can't in every context, we can't watch them all the time. So schools have to be in the business of building character. Because if without character, there's nothing that we can do.
Good answer, Jenny. How do we come back from that one? So is there a difference between teaching about AI and teaching students how to interact with it responsibly?
I was talking the other day about this idea that people used to use Google as a search engine, and now bad use of AI is to use AI as an answer engine. And I was wondering whether we might say that a good use of AI would be as an inquiry engine. Because we would say to our students that we like AI to be a conversation, to be a part of a conversation in a room with you. So if you are at home and you are struggling to understand something, you can use the AI as another inquirer in the room. You wouldn't want it to be the only inquirer in a conversation, but we would say that was a more positive use of AI. And that's that thing about, teaching them to use it well. If we are going to say you've got to be wary of this, this, and this, we have to say there are positives to it, or there are potential benefits to it. And for me, that is one of those potential benefits. If you can have a conversation driven by your understanding, because you have some understanding, you can have a conversation with it, then it becomes an engine of inquiry, potentially, not in the fossil sense, but in the asking of questions sense. And it was something I was sort of playing around with, this idea of answer engines. I don't want it, nobody wants an answer. Well, and people do want an answer engine, but it's not educationally positive. But I think an inquiry, engine has real potential from an educational point of view. Sorry, it doesn't answer your question, but that's where my thoughts were going.
No, but I think that it's really interesting, because being somebody who works on their own a lot, and usually with no one to ask, having something there that prompts another thought is really useful, so it does have its benefits. But I think when I look back at the question that I've just asked, Jenny's already answered it, because we are wanting to teach our students how to interact with it responsibly, and that sort of goes back to the way what Jenny was saying in the first place. Jenny, do you want to come on in?
Sorry. I think there are two things there. I think the interesting thing of as an adult working on your own, going to something because you want something to help you to prompt thought is really interesting. But I think also the interesting question is, where would you have gone before AI? And whether that AI is almost breaking down communities. So you build up communities of people with a common cause or experts or whatever it is, and you think, actually, that person knows quite a lot, I might ask them. And that's not necessarily always true. Sometimes it would be a Google search, sometimes it would be a site that you would go to. But that's a danger we need to be aware of. I think the other thing in terms of teaching about AI, I think we have talked quite a lot actually about teaching children how to or not to interact with it. But I think we have to take a step back with the teaching about AI, because there are an awful lot of ethical, environmental, societal, all sorts of issues with AI that we need to be talking with children about. And an AI search I was reading recently takes 10 times as much power as a straight Google search. So if you're using it as a search engine, how can you justify, given it's a bad search engine, how environmentally can we justify using 10 times more power in a world where climate change is really, really important? And having those questions of, if you're going to use it, it's got to be something that only it can do in a way, or something that is special to it, and not actually something you could do better in another way, because there are costs, and those costs are so hidden that we don't see them. But there are environmental costs, there are all sorts of ethical issues with it stealing other people's data. My son was horrified at the thought that it was crawling around just taking all of the stories and poems and websites and whatever that have been written and just using them without anybody's permission. And, if I put something up on the internet, does that mean it can just take it? And like, well, yeah, kind of it does. And we've got to be talking about that. We've got to be talking about the creativity and the issues with music and the issues with film writing and those kind of things, because these are big issues that our children are going to have to deal with. And that's the things that I lump in the box of teaching about AI, alongside how it works and what it's actually good for. So generative AI is poor at logic, really poor. And the only way it's getting better at logic is being kind of taught circumstances. So things like, there was a lovely one I saw recently about, it was something like, John's mother has 3 children, snap, crackle, and it blew up. And they fixed it. It doesn't do that anymore, but it's a whack-a-mole thing where they're fixing things because it's not reasoning, it's taking things it finds on the internet. Children understanding how generative AI works and what it's actually doing is really important for understanding what it's good at. It's good at pattern recognition. It's really good at things like helping doctors identify tumors and things like that. And those are the places where I can see it being a good thing. Ethically, there are so many other issues with it, and there are issues with it across the board. I had an email from Magic School the other day that was about, please let us use our AI to analyze your school data. You just need to sign up to this and we'll sort you out with some kind of data agreement. And I just thought, why would we want to hand all our children's data over to an AI? That's awful.
Yeah.
So these things are things we do need to talk about with students.
Absolutely. Can I bring you in, Matthew? Do you think, or do you already talk about AI and when you're teaching about it, do you bring all of the things that Jenny is bringing up? I would imagine you probably do.
Well, I mean, I've got to explain where our school is at in this process to understand, the context that I'm in. We've kind of taken a 1-year pause with AI because of other projects that we're working on. And so that's meant that up until this time, when I checked with our IT department, we still are going to be making next year, guidelines for using AI in our school. Now, when you take that and match it with the fact that we're an IB World School and where it's at, that might help, kind of put into context where I'm at. When I taught a lesson in a unit with the grade 10 design class, I took the point of view that they are all using AI, and it's my job to understand the unit, understand the AI that they could use, suggest the best tool I could think of to do what they're doing, and show them how to use it ethically. And I think what I did, I chose Perplexity. I tried 3 with a couple of CAS students. Perplexity was the best tool, and I showed them how to use it, how to reference it. I did the best that I could do in my situation, and I think I will continue to operate this way because I think it matches with what the IB is saying we're supposed to do. So
Absolutely.
that's my take on it at this point.
And I think it's evolving, isn't it? And I think things have changed such a lot even over the last year. If I think about what was being said in the, you know, in the educational circles on LinkedIn, for example, it was like, it's gonna be absolutely amazing, and this now it would be in every school and everybody using it. And actually, we're not really that much further ahead. And what's become apparent to me is that the niggles that were there a year ago are still there and in different way and shapes and forms. So I think AI is going to stay with us. I think I'm in 2 camps. I think I'm both in Jenny's and in Matthew's. I think there has to be an element of, you know, we as librarians need to work out how it's working and what it's working, and that ethical element is a really big one. Um, uh, let's move on to one of the other questions I have. I'm going to jump ahead a bit. Are there any foundational inquiry or research skills that prepare students to use AI critically, regardless of whether they've used the tools in school yet or not? I think this is a perfect Jenny Jenny question.
Yes, all of them. I think if you are a really engaged, empowered inquirer, if you understand how to generate good questions, if you're curious, so the AI gives you an answer, oh, why is it giving me that? I need to push that a bit more. I need to work out where that's come from. If you have a natural suspicion of anything that anyone gives you and you want to know where it came from and the biases that are in it, if you pull stuff together and you think, oh, I found out this, this, and this, I can make notes, I can turn that into my own understanding. And then if you care about the audience that you're expressing it to and you want to make it as understandable as you can for that audience, and you sit back and you think about what it is that you've learned, that's the fossil cycle, that's the inquiry cycle. And you have to do all of that with AI. So we have to be teaching at the top of our game, teaching inquiry skills really well. Lower down in school, I would say we do that without AI because it's just like the maths and the calculators. Until you can do that right to an extent, there's no point introducing AI into the equation. But as you go further up, you can introduce little bits of AI here and there because it's exactly the same skills that you're using everywhere else. And we have to get those skills right because those are the things that are going to protect students from exploitation in whatever comes, because now we've got the generative AI that we have. Who knows what comes next? And we are teaching students not for the next 2 years, we're teaching the students maybe for the next 80 years of their lives, and we don't know what's coming. But inquiry skills are the foundation for everything.
Yeah, thank you. So how do we balance the ethical tension between promoting thoughtful AI use and protecting students from those potential harms? What do you think, Ruth?
I think, there comes a point at which we are not able to do everything. We are not in control of everything. And all I feel I'm able to do is to be constantly reminding as as it comes up, as any AI conversation comes up, do you understand about the ethics? Are you thinking about the bias? Are you thinking about the content? Who are you sharing your data with? Where is it taking its data from? I can't do more than that. You're right, Jenny, you can't watch them all the time. It's not my responsibility to be, worrying about what they're doing. And I can't make a difference to that. So yeah, I feel I do the best, that I can. Yeah.
And I think that's the same for everybody. I think, it's like there is a balance, and you have to find that balance, because nobody else is actually forcing anybody to do anything. It seems we're all finding our own way. I'm going to ask Matthew, do we risk teaching outdated or incomplete skills if we're not engaging with AI as it changes the research and learning process? Do you think?
I hope I get this right. We we don't, and I think thinking from the point of the MYP beta, there's going to be a good way to think about this. A new concept with the MYP beta program is this idea of teaching strategies that support learning ATL skills, and what it allows us to do at our schools is say, how are we going to teach a skill? And decide pedagogically the way to teach it. And then in the case of with AI, then what it allows us to do is say, is AI going to help us to teach questioning, right? And or evaluating sources. And if we feel that it's not, then we say, okay, we can't use AI in this unit because it's not going to support our students to learn the skill. And that's really what I expect the direction to go now that we are talking with this kind of terminology.
Yeah, and I think that's really important, finding that balance, isn't it? Is the fact that as teachers and as librarians, we need to use our expertise and understanding to make sure that we are heading in the right direction and using it when it's appropriate, isn't it? What about Ruth? Are we on that same question? Do we risk teaching outdated and incomplete skills?
I certainly don't think we risk outdated skills. It's all the same skills. But I think the risk is that our voices aren't in the conversation. They're not in that teaching conversation. I'm very lucky in my school. My voice is in that group of people who are looking at AI in teaching and learning and AI policy. But I'm aware that I am probably, as rare as hen's teeth. I don't think there are many librarians with that, who are bringing that understanding into that conversation. And therefore the conversation is being led by teachers, which is great, but only one-sided. And that's my concern. It's not that we risk it, it's that the schools risk it because they are not listening to all of the voices that potentially could be heard, and perhaps because they don't employ all of the voices that might be heard. Not all schools are employing a librarian at all, let alone one who feels that they have anything that they could add. You know, not an underconfident librarian, but a librarian with the experience and the qualification required to contribute something to the conversation.
Absolutely. Jenny, let me bring you in.
I think that getting your voices heard, I think that's a really important point. And it's not just with the staff, it's with the students. And if we don't acknowledge the AI tools that they are using, and we don't talk about them, and we don't have some idea of what kind of things they might be using, then we lose a voice with the students as well. So where I might well be saying to students, don't use this because, I'm doing that from a place of understanding, and I subscribe to 4 or 5 different Substacks about AI. So I'm getting messages pretty much every day on something about AI, and I'm really careful to subscribe to both sides of the argument. So I've got people who are telling me the dangers, but I've also got people telling me all the new uses they're making of it, so that I know what might be out there, so that I can decide what is worth talking about, so that I have credibility with my students. And I think that's really important. I think Ruth's absolutely right. Schools need to have the right people. They need to have people who know what they're talking about and are prepared to get in on the conversation. And most schools, I don't think, have made an effort to employ librarians. There are some fabulous librarians out there, but I don't think many schools are making the effort to go out and find a librarian who can do that for them. And I think we need to be very clear with teaching staff when we're talking about building character and we're talking about tools and all of those. It's true for the teaching staff as well. And I have 4 very clear rules that I suggest staff and students use when they're looking at an AI use. For students, we start with, is this use allowed within the rules of my assignment? Because that's a deal breaker. But then, does this use of AI make me more or less creative? Does this use of AI help me to learn or rob me of a learning opportunity? And would I be prepared to publicly acknowledge this use of AI? And that's a challenge I put out there to the teachers. If you're using it to help you write a letter for a trip, if you're using it to help you write a report, if you're using it to help you create a worksheet, would you be prepared to put on the bottom of that, this was created with AI? And if not, why not? And if it's because you're embarrassed that people know that, or you think they wouldn't want you to have done that, then don't do it. And I think having wrestled with those things ourselves is really quite important.
Yeah. What a great way to finish. Unless anybody else has got anything else they'd like to add. Matthew, is there anything else that you'd like to say as before we finish off tonight? Is there anything that you missed that you'd like to add?
No, just I thank you for being a part of the conversation. I'm really interested in being any place where I can talk to people about this subject. I think it's important, and so I appreciate to be in this conversation. Thank you.
Fantastic. It's been great to have you, Matthew. Thank you for joining us. Jenny, have you got anything else you'd like to add?
I'm sorry, I feel I'm talking a lot tonight.
This is the lady who said no, she didn't have much to say.
I just had a really lovely quote, or slightly frightening quote, I think, that I came across the other day. It was from an article in The Guardian about ChatGPT being sycophantic and wanting to give people or not wanting, too emotive a word for a model, but being trained to give people the answers that they want. And he ended with, it's worth reminding the public that AI models are not your friends. They're not designed to help you answer the questions that you ask. They're designed to provide the most pleasing response possible and to ensure that you are fully engaged with them. So what happened this week, which was this sycophantic issues, wasn't really a bug, it was a feature. It's meant to do that. And that's a message we have to get across to students and to staff. AI models are not your friends. We can use them, but they're not your friends.
Yeah, great one. Thank you. And Ruth, is there any last words from you?
I have nothing to talk any of that, but really, really interesting conversation. Agreed.
Thank you so much for joining me today, Matthew, Jenny, and Ruth. As always, anything that we've talked about will be in the show notes below if it's appropriate. If you'd like to comment on anything you've heard today, we'd love to hear your thoughts. Don't forget to subscribe to my podcast so you don't miss out on future discussions. Thank you very much for listening.